coming. I know it's a cold night out here, but I'm so happy to see that we have a packed house and we have so many community members who really have their heart in the game, and I'm excited to hear from all the candidates here. And I just want to thank Brenneman for having us here and for hosting. And I will mention, I know people were coming in really quickly, but there is a group called Friends of Brenneman that is kind of helping to bridge the gap with the CPS budget and what the teachers actually need here in our community. So if you haven't done so, please look at our website, and also we have some flyers at the table where you came in. There's a QR code there, so you can just go ahead and get like on the list there, so you can get some information on any upcoming events or fundraisers that they may have. But without further ado, I am going to introduce to you Dr. Katrina Singleton, the principal here at Brenneman, and she'll take it from here.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. My name is Katrina Singleton. I am honored to be the principal at Brenneman Elementary School, and so excited to be here and to meet our amazing candidates tonight, just to learn more about them and what value they have to add to the community. We know that leadership is so important, so we're so glad you're here, and we're so excited that one of our social studies teachers, 7th and 8th, Ms. Perez, will be moderating, so let's give her a hand. We also included some of our students, so we have some of our 8th graders here. They'll be asking some questions as well. Wave your hand. They're in the back. One of our students is actually on our local school council, so it's really great. We really believe in student voice, so we're excited to have him part. That's Samuel. He's on our LSC as well. So I also just want to give a shout out to the Buena Park Neighborhood Association. Mr. Postlewaite and I started July 1st, 2020. At the height of the pandemic, and somehow we were connected to the Buena Park Neighborhood Association, and they have been with us every step of the way. I mean, every step of the way. What can we do to help? Small, jump in, quick wins, what can we do? And now they are really thinking about a long-term path of support for our school, and so we really appreciate all of you who have contributed, who have helped come out on Saturdays for Show Up Spruce Up, or donated to our coat drive. All of that really matters, and we're really excited about this long-term partnership. We can't do it without you, and so we're really excited to see so many community members here. Just know if you need anything, we're just a text or a call away. If you have any questions, we want to get school tours going again, so you can get in our building, see our students, find out what programming we have. We've really increased our programming after school and within the school day. So Brenneman is on the rise. We want to be a neighborhood school that you all are so very proud of, and we're excited to have you all here this evening. This is my amazing assistant principal, Mr. Postlewaite.
I'm going to get a real quick version of that in Spanish, because I know we have some Spanish speakers here. Así que bienvenidos a todos. Estamos muy emocionados a tener los candidatos para Alderman aquí esta noche en nuestra escuela. Estamos también muy agradecidos a tener la señora Pérez, que es una maestra nuestra. Ella es impresionante. Ella va a estar aquí con nosotros esta noche. Finalmente, simplemente para decir que nuestro Friends of Brenneman, es algo muy importante para nosotros. Cuando hemos empezado, ellos estaban con nosotros paso a paso desde el principio y están trabajando muy unidos con nosotros a encontrar dónde se puede ayudar a los maestros y también a nuestros estudiantes. Finalmente quiero decir hola a nuestros estudiantes, los 8th graders, hola por favor. Así que muchísimas gracias por venir y mucha suerte a todos.
Now we're going to turn it over to our moderator, Ms. Perez. Let's give her a hand.
Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Wonderful. Good evening, everyone. And we are so grateful to have, like Dr. Singleton said, so many people here. We know that you are truly invested in your community and the possible candidate, well, your actual alderman, your next alderman is sitting here before you. So we are very excited. Brenneman is super excited to be hosting this event with you this evening. I'm going to give each candidate an opportunity to introduce themselves and tell us why they are running for alderman for the 46th ward, and what's your favorite part about the ward as well. So we'll just start at this end. The candidates have told me I can call them by their first name, so we'll start at this end with Patrick, if that's okay.
So I'm Patrick Nagel, and I moved to Buena Park over 30 years ago with my family. And I love this neighborhood so much that when I got my first place, I got it right down the street on Clarendon. Now back in those days, I basically survived on a diet of Michael's Pizza and Bojono spaghetti. I got older and I met my wife, and we moved 2 blocks south on Gray Street, literally just south of Broadway. And we've been raising our family there ever since. I've been active in the East Lakeview Neighbors Organization in that capacity, and I've worked on our annual fundraiser for the Oktoberfest at Murphy's Bleachers. Hopefully some of you have gone there, I highly recommend it. And we raise money for local charities and for schools in the neighborhood, including this very one that we're standing in today. I'm running for alderman because DNA is in my public service is in my DNA. DNA is in my DNA too, apparently. But public service is in my DNA. In 1917, my great-grandfather joined the Chicago Fire Department. My grandfather also worked as a Chicago firefighter. My dad is a retired public school teacher. My mom's a retired nurse. My wife's been in public service for 28 years. And I, too, have spent my entire career in public service in the federal government. I've worked as an attorney, as a federal prosecutor, and now as a judge. And for the last 6.5 years, I've been chief judge of the Social Security Administration, where I oversee the nation's disability appeals process. So for me, public service is a natural thing, and running for alderman was a natural step. Because I feel that right now we have a real crisis in leadership at City Hall, and we need people who can come in on day one, who have experience, executive leadership skills, and who have run large government components successfully with proven results. And those are the qualities that I bring to this job. As to why I love Buena Park, I've always loved Buena Park. I've been here much of my life. I love the diversity in Buena Park. I'm in an interracial marriage. I've got multiracial children, and Buena Park has always been a really welcoming place. Even when we were getting petitions for this election, standing in front of Dahlem, I probably met some of you there. It was probably the nicest group of people. I got petitions in the entire 46th ward. The people that go to Dahlem are awesome. People who go to Michael's are awesome. So this is a community that really makes everyone feel welcome. And I've been to several of the Buena Park events, pub crawls, etc. And they've also made us all feel welcome. So I really appreciate that. And I promise you this, as your next alderman, I will be an independent voice for the 46th ward. I'm not going to be beholden to outside interests or engage in backroom deals. I will be fighting for you every single day so that we can get the resources that we need in this ward to have a safe and vibrant community for the whole community, for all of us. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go ahead and welcome our next candidate. Her name is Mary Ann, and she's also going to be telling us just a little bit about herself and why she's also running for alderman of the 46th ward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stay seated, especially for the folks who are watching on Zoom, so that we all stay in the frame. My name is Mary Ann Lalonde. I'm a scientist by training. I'm a former Block Club president, and for a long time been a leader in our community. I ran for alderman in 2019 also, and I lost our incumbent in a runoff by 25 votes. But that has not stopped me from continuing my community activism. You asked what our favorite part of the ward was, and for me, it is the people. I've really enjoyed interacting with folks in our ward from Uptown to Lakeview on a variety of projects. As a member of the Lakeshore Drive Study Task Force, I fought in Uptown to keep the Wilson ramp open, and in Lakeview to reduce motorcycle noise, expand park access, and protect the tree canopy. On the Clarendon Park Advisory Council, we won a years-long battle to save our historic community center, including an over $4 million renovation that added ADA accessibility. And as president of the Lakeside Area Neighbors Association, I fought to preserve our largest employer in the ward, Weiss Hospital, when it was acquired by Pipeline Health, a company that routinely has closed hospitals and flipped them into luxury real estate. I've spent most of my career working in sustainability, and another thing that I really love about the 46th ward is the lakefront. The Lakefront Protection Ordinance was last updated in 1973 and is no longer adequate.
I was part of a team that helped prevent an electronic music concert from disrupting the habitat that our endangered piping plovers, Monty and Rose, called home. If I get elected, I'll be the first scientist to ever serve on Chicago City Council. And you might be wondering why this is important and why we should put scientists into the government. It's not just to serve as advocates for science-based causes like healthcare and the environment. I served in the US Senate with about 30 other scientists, and this is what I learned. Scientists take a pragmatic approach that puts data and shared values over politics and have zero tolerance for corruption. As you may be able to tell, community activism is my love language. My campaign is a grassroots effort to unite our community, and the reason I want to be alderperson is to have even more ability to affect change. It will allow me to continue the work that I've already been doing and also do more for you.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'm gonna stand up because I saw some people pop their hands up. Happy snow in January, finally, neighbors. We did it, okay? Let's make sure it's this clear on February 28th, okay? Let's send a prayer up for all of us. My name is Angela Clay, and I am running to be the next alderperson of the 46th Ward. This is really a humbling experience to be in my elementary school's gym, you all. Talk about a full circle moment. My family has been in the 46th Ward for over 80 years, raising a beautiful, multiracial, multi-generational family right here within walking distance of this beautiful elementary school. I am literally what you get out of the 46th Ward. We are a combination of diverse neighbors, of amazing education, and of resourceful neighbors. And that's exactly what you have standing in front of you, right? I'm a product of affordable housing. I am literally why we need affordability in our neighborhoods. We are giving young people and families the access that they deserve in safe, vibrant neighborhoods, okay? I was an organizer since I was 14 years old with the Organization of the Northeast, which is now One North Side. I got my start because I had a conversation with a few young people that I went to school with, and they were tired of people coming and telling us why we were failing in Chicago public schools. When I was in high school, I went to the mighty Uplift Community High School, the ward's only high school. We were having a conversation amongst ourselves where the federal government were telling us we were failing. But they weren't having a conversation with us. They were just telling us that we were the problem. So for 3 years, we did participatory action research where I traveled the entire country, studying classrooms, studying policies that actually implemented good practices to keep young people in high school. A lot of that work is still carrying on to this day. When I was actually 22 years old, I became the youngest president of a 51-year-old housing non-for-profit right here in the 46th Ward called Voice of the People. That was a task, you all, at 22 years old, not just being responsible for $1 million in revenue, but also being responsible for people's lives, right? A lot of the work that I've done is not community service to me. This is my life, and this is the lives of our neighbors that we're fighting for, and I want to continue on with that. I also have been instrumental in making sure that our elders have the proper resources that they need. During the height of the pandemic, we jumped into rescue mode. We started mutual aid. As neighbors, we all know that we were in this thing together. We still are. Let's not go wood, okay? We needed to show up for each other, so we started to do mutual aid every Wednesday at 2 locations where our elders and our families are able to come and get fresh produce. Our ward is one of the most diverse and progressive wards in the entire city of Chicago, and it should have representation. There has never been a person of color to represent this diverse ward, you all, in all of Chicago history, okay? We are at a pivotal moment because in city council, we will have a completely new opportunity to get things done. The policies that are passed at the local level and the city level impact each one of us. And we need to make sure that we have somebody who's going to go in there and get the job done. I have a degree in public policy from shout out to DePaul University and my DPUs in the house, okay? We did that too, okay? The 46th Ward is literally why I have that. I have the accessibility to grab a degree right on that red line and get off at Fullerton each and every day and come home. I was able to get a job at the Federal Reserve Bank 4 years ago, living my best life. And my neighbors tapped me on my shoulder and they said, Angela, who are you voting for? And I said, I don't know. And they said, you should do it. So without any campaign experience, $20,000, which is a drop in the bucket, you all, we came within 300 votes of making the runoff. So we're back again. I'm proud to say that we have over 16 endorsements, including the Chicago Teachers Union, the Cook County College Teachers Union, the Sierra Club, because they are invested in the longevity of our ward just like I am. So you'll hear way more about myself, but that's just a little snippet of who I am, and I hope I can earn your vote. Thank you.
Go figure. The moment I get my speech down to 2 minutes, we change the rules. Anyway, hello everyone. My name is Rashonda Williams. I've lived in Chicago my entire life. I've lived on the north side of Chicago for the last 13 years. I've worked the last 20 plus years in the illustrious Palmer House Hilton as a bartender. I'm a member of Unite Here Local 1, and I sit on the Illinois AFL-CIO board that represents workers that build your buildings, care for the sick, transport us, and feed our communities. My advocacy work started over 30 years ago when I became a social worker, working for places like the Illinois Department on Aging, the Department of Children and Family Services, Families of Domestic Violence, and Substance Abuse Services Incorporated. I left social work because I adopted my 8-year-old client, who is now my 30-year-old son. I have 2 sons whom I've supported working my union job at the Palmer House Hilton. But advocating was still in my heart, and it was still my greatest desire. I started speaking out against unfair labor practices, resolving conflicts, negotiating benefits, wage increases, safety, and protections. I've led several fights like HOPO, Hands Off Pants On campaign, an ordinance which protects sexual assault and harassment by guests. This was an issue. I saw it become an ordinance, a city law, now a state law. I also led the Quebec ordinance to fight to ensure that workers laid off during COVID got their jobs back after being fired. I was a strong leader for COBRA when so many of us in hospitality lost health care benefits during a pandemic. I went on to represent the USA at the UN in Geneva, Switzerland, where the first international treaty against sexual harassment was signed. I've worked in this ward for many years, advocating for children in the care of DCFS. There was a emergency reception center that was on Montrose, and for my brother, whom had mental health challenges. His name was Joseph Williams, and he lived in this ward for 40 years. He experienced homelessness and struggles with being safe. My educational background, which is that of social work and law enforcement from Western Illinois University, go Leathernecks, has prepared me to reasonably address the issues that are plaguing this ward. I will fight for you and everyone in this ward, just as I fought for so many for the last 35 years. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Kim Walls, and it's so wonderful to see so many people here. I'm especially excited to see kids. I actually did my master's thesis in civic education, so I love when students are engaging in the democratic process. So I moved into the 46th Ward in 2005, and I live here with my fiance and my 20-week-old daughter, Esme, who you might hear at some point throughout the night. And I was raised by a public school teacher and a nurse. And what I learned growing up is that it's not about me, it's about public service, and it's about community. And that's why I started knocking on doors in 1992 when I was trying to save our after-school programming at my high school. We were going to lose our orchestra and all of our arts programs. And I learned the importance of getting involved then. And my parents taught me that if something's broken, you have to go fix it. And I'm going door to door, I'm talking to voters, I'm talking to small businesses, and there's a lot of things we have to fix in the city. I'm hearing that people don't feel safe walking to the Jewel on a Saturday afternoon. And I want to make sure that not only do we fill vacant positions in the police department, but what are we doing to really deal with the root causes of violent crime? How are we dealing with the historic disinvestment that we have in communities across Chicago? I'm also hearing about affordability. People who can't afford to stay in their home or a neighborhood they've lived in for generations because of rising property taxes, but individuals who can't afford to enter the housing market because of the rising cost of rents and properties. I also hear a lot about the social safety net. And this is an issue that's actually very personal to me. I have a brother who's chronically unhoused and suffers from mental health issues. And I've tried over 30 years to help him, and he won't let me help him. And before my parents both passed in the last 5 years, I let them know that I was going to work to change the system for other people so that they also don't have to worry about where they're going to sleep that night if it's somewhere warm. I'm also hearing a lot about constituent services. Individuals who are so frustrated with the city because their light post doesn't work, there's cracks in the sidewalk. They requested an audible crosswalk 5.5 years ago, and the city can't seem to get its act together to put it in place. And this is an area where I think I have a lot of expertise. I worked for Mike Quigley 8 years on the county side, 2 years on the federal side, running a constituent service office. So I know how to connect people's services and actually get things done. And getting things done is a really important point. We're all gonna have fantastic ideas about what we wanna do in the city, what we wanna do in the ward, but at the end of the day, do you have the experience to actually get things done? I have over 22 years of experience in the government, the nonprofit, and the private sector. I wrote 7 reports on how to restructure and reinvent government with Congressman Mike Quigley. I helped launch a nonprofit health insurance company for the uninsured. And currently with Walgreens, I launched vaccination efforts in 8 states for COVID and opened up some of the first testing locations in the entire country. So I know how to build public-private partnerships, which is imperative when you deal with public health emergencies. And it's this experience that's led me to be endorsed by Governor J.B. Pritzker, U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, Congressman Mike Quigley, Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, State Senator Sarah Feigenholz, and State Reps Ann Williams and Margaret Croak. Because they know that not only do I have the passion and care about the issues and care so much about this ward and community, they know that I have the experience to get things done that's really important. And I love this community. You ask what we love about this ward and this community. I love the diversity of this community. I love that I'm going to raise our daughter Esme in this community. It's one of the most diverse wards in the entire country, and I'm so proud of that, and I would be so honored to lead this ward. Thank you.
Okay, I am actually really happy that I cannot vote in the 46th ward because I would be really debating hard with myself. Your candidates sound extremely intelligent, articulate, and passionate, so I'm excited to get into the Q&A with them and find out their views on very specific topics. We're going to start with education. As an educator, of course, I'm very passionate about this topic. I actually would like to start let's go ahead and start with Rashonda. In your opinion, what is the role of an alderman when it comes to Chicago schools? What will you do to ensure that kids in the 46th ward receive a high quality education? Before I allow Rashonda to respond to that, can we please raise our hand if there's an empty seat by you so that the people in the back, please raise your hand if there's an empty seat by you. If you guys in the back would like to sit, you're welcome to sit by. Okay, we're good? Okay, wonderful. Rashonda.
Well, first of all, I think we need to be talking to our schools, our educators, our children, and the parents of our kids. It's very important for a kid to get a quality education if there are not support services for the family. If the families have to go to work and worry about how they're going to feed their children, how they're going to clothe their children, how they're going to send their children to school, that becomes the breakdown with learning. At every point and juncture in life, every alderman should be talking to these 3 groups of people. Asking what the children need to thrive. asking what the teachers need. We have to make sure that we are supporting our faculty and our staff. So these are the most important things in making sure our children thrive. I know this because I worked at DCFS. We had children that hadn't been able to get to the doctor's appointment. They're feeling sick. If you're sick, how can you thrive in school? If you're hungry, how can you thrive in school? These are issues that I face every day dealing with children that did not have homes, that did not have parents to take care of them. We have a crisis now where we have children that are living in their caseworkers' offices. How can a kid learn? How can a child thrive? So we have to make sure that we are asking these questions, that there is involvement from the aldermen and involvement from the teachers and the community and the staff.
Thank you. Can we have possibly Kim, would you also like to answer that question?
So it's really unfortunate with the state of Illinois is we've created this system in Illinois that the quality of education depends on your zip code, which is incredibly unfair. So depending on where you're born, where your family can afford to live, it's going to make a tremendous difference in the resources that your school has. And in addition to that, the state is supposed, well, the individuals, schools receiving and school districts receiving funding from the state are supposed to follow a funding formula in which schools get funding based on need, and CPS is not following that. So we have massive inequities in resources available to our schools, so we need to fix that. Because of these resource inequities, we don't have as much after-school programming across schools across the board, and we also don't have services that the kids need. So kids today need access to counselors. They need access to a school nurse. A lot of kids today are experiencing so much trauma, and we don't have resources in all the schools to help them process it and deal with it. So we're really setting kids up to fail. My father was a public school teacher for 30 years. At the end of his teaching, he said he was so frustrated because it wasn't about the kids anymore, and it wasn't about the classroom. It was all about administration and testing and all of this bureaucracy around that didn't have anything to do with learning. And so we need to get the focus back on learning in our schools and get the resources to our schools that we need so that it's more equitable and not based on your zip code.
Thank you.
Okay, y'all, I wish I could show you my drawing, because if we're gonna start talking about schools, it is an ecosystem, okay? When we're talking about great quality schools, first of all, our children have to have access to great quality homes. Affordability is the #1 issue that is on the minds of our parents sending their children to public school right now. I'm currently on this local school council here at Brenneman, and 75% of our students qualify for free or reduced lunch. There is no affordable housing being built within blocks of here. That is not a long-term solution for us as a community, because we are built on neighborhood schools. Secondly, we need to make sure that our schools are offering high-quality, culturally relevant curriculum. Our young people are growing in an age of technology where they have so much knowledge at their fingertips. They want to know about themselves. Thirdly, they need to be going to schools in their neighborhoods that are safe. Our young people do not feel safe in the city of Chicago. And if there is one demographic that's talking about public safety, I can guarantee you it is young people of color in this city. We need to be making sure that our communities are safe in which we are sending our young people. Last but not least, we also need to be looking into the sustainable community schools model. You asked what an older person can do. We always talk about funding our schools, but we actually have a model that will sustain our young people and the families that send them to these schools. A sustainable community school model looks like this. Not only are you able to send your young person to a great school, but you are also able to give services in the form of, if you are houseless, we are able to link you with a social worker to get you housed. If you are experiencing food insecurity, we have an option for you to get fed on site and also be sent home with resources for food. Lastly, access to mental health care is something that our young people need, you all, especially coming out of COVID. It is really imperative that we get an older person who is going to be making sure that our young people have the mental health resources that they need, and also their caregivers too.
So we need to have high quality schools in order to attract students. I think the per pupil funding formula for CPS really is inequitable. In order to raise the quality of the school so that more students want to attend, we should think of schools as community hubs. When we think of community hubs in the 46th Ward, you might think of Chicago Market being a community hub that hosts small business events, or Sunnyside Mall hosting outdoor events like Halloween and soon to be a farmer's market. Schools should serve the same role in the community, and that will draw more students in if we're involving students, parents, teachers, and non-parents and neighbors that are living in the community. Right now, we don't have a dedicated nurse and a social worker in every CPS school, and I think with the public health impacts of the pandemic, we really need to prioritize that as well. All of that together, I think, will draw more students in. It's important to raise the quality of the school first so that students can come in, instead of asking students to attend a school to then raise the quality after more resources are received.
So the 46th Ward has the 5th fewest school-aged children of any ward in the city of Chicago. Part of that makes sense when you look at the fact that we're the densest geographical ward in the entire city. We also have a lot of tall buildings, as you can see. Tall buildings are not always conducive to having a lot of kids, too, because a lot of the units are smaller, therefore there are fewer families that move into those tall buildings with children. But as a result of that, a lot of our neighborhood schools don't resemble the community schools that maybe many of you grew up with when you were younger. The school where everybody from the neighborhood showed up and went to that school. Some schools do, but other schools have 80 to 90% of the children coming from outside the ward. And that makes it tricky, because when you want to have after-school involvement and build a community, it's a lot harder when the kids get on a bus as soon as school ends and go 5 miles away. So we've got a lot of challenges in that respect within the 46th Ward that maybe some other wards don't. As an alderperson, building that community is going to be a difficult task, but it's, I think, one worth doing. The school system in general, however, has other challenges that overlay that, namely the fact that we have a very high absenteeism rate in our schools, over 30% in most of our elementary schools. It makes it very difficult for our great teachers to teach kids when kids are missing 1 out of every 3 days. It's really hard to get through a math curriculum when kids aren't there to learn as the building blocks go along. We also have issues with, unfortunately, a lot of children who are unhoused. In some schools, we have 20% of the child population that's not actually in what we would call to be traditional housing situations. They're going from house to aunt's house, somebody else's house. That also contributes to the absenteeism. So these are larger structural problems that an alderman and city council in general need to address in order to make our school system foundationally stronger. It's not going to be easy, and we're about on the precipice now, within the next year and a half or so, of seeing a whole new format come into play, because we're going to have a new elected school board. For those of you who've been following this, it is on the horizon. And that's going to change the landscape also, because now we're going to have people within the communities making decisions about the schools. And some of those decisions that would have been left to the mayor's office or to aldermen are going to be taken away, and they're going to be made by the community. It's important to have a strong community that takes the education seriously and that's well informed about the issues that exist. And I think an alderperson's role with an elected school board is to make sure that there's a cohesive interplay between the elected school board and the actual teachers and principals at the school, so they have a real understanding of what's going on and can make sound decisions. So it's a difficult problem, but it's one that we have to face because our children are our future, and it's just vitally important for the city of Chicago and for its vitality that we can get this addressed and that we can live and prosper with a strong school district.
Thank you all. Okay, our next topic that I want to discuss, I heard Angela mention this twice. So I'm going to start the questioning with her. And I just want to say to the candidates, you guys are doing an amazing job, but let's try to limit our responses to a minute so we can get through most of the questions. So Angela, I heard you mention in your introduction, as well as when you were answering the question about education, about basically gentrification that's happening here in the community. So my question for you is this: many Chicagoans can't afford to live where they once grew up. such as here, due to rising rents and home prices. So what is your solution to keeping housing affordable in the 46th Ward?
60 seconds. All right, let's do this. Affordability. Affordable housing does not necessarily mean free. When we are talking about affordability, it does not mean that you automatically get a free home. What it means is that 30% of your income goes to our biggest bill, which I think I can speak for majority of us is rent or a mortgage. Every single month, majority of our resources go to pay that one bill. And for a lot of our families in this city who are barely getting by, they are paying upwards of 50 or 60% of their monthly income towards their biggest bill, right? So here in the 46th Ward, what are we doing? One, housing is great. We can all attest to that as a booming community, people want to move here because we are a stone's throw away from Lake Michigan, because they can access public transportation in and out of the ward anywhere they choose to go. What we need to do is make sure that we are building on-site affordable units when we are developing. The developments that are going up right now are being able to pay into what is the Low-Income Housing Trust Fund, you all, which means that they do not have to build on-site units of affordability in this ward. That has to stop. Because if we are going to set our community up for success, again, for longevity, affordability is directly tied to the diversity in our ward. And I can attest that we all love that. So we need to make sure that we are not just building, but we are building housing stock for our families. Families are not raising children in studios and 1-bedrooms. I'm busting at the seams with a 2-year-old in a 2-bedroom, okay? We need to make sure that we are building diverse housing stock and that we are also building on-site affordable units when we are building.
So housing is a mosaic. When we think about affordable housing, we usually think about the voucher programs. That's HUD, CHA, CLIFT, that housing that comes from the Low-Income Housing Trust Fund. There's also market rate rentals, and then home ownership. And when we think about affordability, we have to think across the whole mosaic because displacement occurs at every level there. I was a market rate renter until May of this year when my rent increased $625 a month, that's 35%. And that happened while we were building 2,200 new units within a mile of my home. I had a level of privilege where I was able to leave and become a homeowner, but it wasn't the same for the rest of my building. In order to keep prices low for people, we need to think about adding affordable housing in terms of the voucher form and also other types of housing. We think about supply and demand. As long as there's more supply of housing, we can stabilize rent prices, but when we're thinking about that, we also need to think about the type. Are we adding family-size housing and are we adding affordable housing at the same rates that we're adding those small units and luxury units to stabilize demand across the board? And that goes for property taxes as well. Some people have their homes completely paid off and are faced with increasing property tax bills that can also be displacing. So I think we need to think of affordable housing as a comprehensive solution in addition to making sure we're adding those affordable units when we build new structures and making sure those affordable units come with wraparound services. That's really important. One of the coolest things about Uptown is we have the highest percentage of cross-class friendships, and that leads to a really high rate of accelerated economic mobility for people, and we want to have this opportunity continue here. We have a lot of good transit hubs in the area as well. I think the new plan for equitable transit-oriented development is something that we should definitely look into and improve on.
We in the 46th Ward do a much better job than most of the north side of Chicago when it comes to affordable housing. We have the largest number of subsidized housing residential units in the entire north side, in fact, in the entire city. But also, I think to Angela's point, when we're building new buildings, and we actually have room to build some buildings in our ward, it's essential that we also add affordable housing units in those buildings. Because that's how we can both grow the neighborhood, grow the tax base, support our local businesses by having more people living there, increase safety by having more of a mass of people, but also making sure that we're providing housing for the other people who may not be as fortunate to move into some of those buildings otherwise. It's essential that we do that. It's also essential, to Mary Ann's point, I think, that we have units that are larger in size. As I was talking about with the educational piece, it's not enough just to build studios and one-bedroom apartments. We need to build housing where somebody has a realistic chance of having a child or having 2 children living in that unit. And we're not doing that now, and that's got to change, and we have to improve that. So there are a lot of things that we can do on that front. The other problem, and the other elephant in the room, is that since the year 2000, residential property taxes in the 46th ward have gone up over 200%. That's a lot. And then whether you rent or own, you're paying the results of that, right? So yes, rents are going up. We also have this supply and demand problem where there's a lot of demand to live in our ward, which is great. We want people to live in our ward. Unfortunately, we don't have enough housing for them, which also increases rent prices. So I think one of the solutions that can meet both of these problems is to build buildings and build some decent sized buildings that have multiple units, or multiple rooms in their units, but also have an affordability aspect so that we have people who can afford to live there. We have people who might not be able to afford to live there otherwise, but can live there, and we can keep a vibrant community going while also supporting our commercial and our retail by having more people in the community. I think that's a win-win for everybody.
I think that affordable housing is a crisis now in most major cities, right? If you read the newspapers, New York, places like California, they're all talking about affordable housing. We could learn a lot from the Sankofa house in Lawndale. They built a 56-unit building that had everything from studios to 3 bedrooms to raise a family. But one of the services that they provided that was different from most is they had a laundromat or washers and dryers on every floor. And you might think, why is this important? Well, it's important because if you're in need and support and you have a family, instead of getting used to leaving your children alone, you have a space where you can take your children and engage and get some of the other things done. So what they built was a community of people per floor. Hey, I need to run out to the store. Can you help me watch my children, or can you watch my children when I run out to the store? So there was a sense of community. The other thing is, I think we all know what we should do on the back end, making sure that people have affordable housing, offering support services, trying to reduce taxes so people aren't taxed out of their homes. But I think we fail to have the conversation about making sure that the population of homelessness does not continue to grow. And here's where I have some of my best and greatest ideas when I'm laying in the bed at night, right? There's some situations where we can start right now. Truman College has a middle school college program. This is a time to engage young folks in careers that will pay them well. This is our opportunity, because we can miss this opportunity, and affordable housing and the homeless population can continue to grow each and every year. But we have to make sure that we're reaching out to our young folks right now saying, look, here's what's projected in the increase in housing, and here's how you can curtail that. Let's get you in a job. Let's get you in a program. Let's get you in an apprenticeship that will prevent you from being one of these numbers down the line. And this is one of the things that I think that most of us fail to consider. And as an alderperson, I will consider everything that is in front of me to making sure we're addressing homelessness and affordable housing.
So I want to work with you to create a neighborhood that we can afford to live in. A neighborhood that we can afford to grow our families in. I love that everyone's talking about larger housing being needed in the ward. I completely agree. We're raising our little one in 874 square feet. And if you've ever had a little baby, you know how much real estate they take with their stuff everywhere. So we need larger housing. But we also need to make sure it's affordable, and that involves a couple different things. We have to deal with the property tax crisis in this issue. I actually had an op-ed in the Chicago Sun-Times about 3 weeks ago talking about this. Because property taxes, it's not just impacting the ability of homeowners to stay in their homes, it's impacting the ability of renters to stay where they live. We had a dramatic increase in property taxes for apartment buildings in the ward. And that means that eventually those rents are gonna have to go up to help cover the cost of the property taxes, so we have to deal with that crisis. Affordability also means, what are we building? I want to keep the 486th Ward moving forward, but we have to make sure we don't leave people behind in the process. And that means that any new development has to have at least 20% of affordable housing on site in the development, not paid into the fund. But we also have to look at naturally occurring affordable housing. The majority of property owners in the city of Chicago don't own large buildings. They own 2 flats, they own 4 flats, and 6 flats. And those are such an important part of our naturally occurring affordable housing in the city of Chicago. But a lot of times they can't afford the property tax increases, or they can't afford a roof repair unless they increase rents, or they can't afford a code upgrade. So what are we doing with the city to give them the tools so that they can keep that housing affordable? So that means what kind of money and funding is in the porch and repair program? And what other programs can we create to help small investors keep their property affordable for the residents in 486th Ward? As Alderwoman, I'm going to work on this every single day so that we can all afford to stay in this community that we love so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And I'm actually going to refer back to something you said earlier. When it comes to public safety, I remember you saying that people are afraid to walk to Jewel on a Saturday afternoon. So let me bring it back to you to ask you, what is your stance on public safety? I know that's a big concern for the community. And what is your role, or the future alderman's role, in keeping Chicago safe for everyone?
So there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle with public safety that we have to fix. We have 1,500 vacant positions in the police department. So that means that police officers can't get out of their cars to be out in the neighborhood and talking to the neighbors and developing those relationships to establish trust. It also means that we're pulling sworn officers off the beat to fill administrative roles because those positions are not being filled. Compared to other major municipalities, we don't have enough detectives to actually solve crimes. And we need to fix that issue as well because we're sharing 2 DNA evidence technicians with the Illinois State Police. So the whole state of Illinois has 2 DNA evidence technicians to solve any crime. So we're not getting crime solved. But we can't just talk about the police. We have to talk about the disinvestment in communities across the city that's leading to increases in violence. In communities where we're not investing in economic opportunity, where there's not job opportunity, where we don't have enough housing. We have to deal with those issues when we're talking about public safety, and we also have to talk about violence prevention. So last year in the city budget, the city allocated $85 million for violence prevention programming. So they could check that box, look what we did. Of that $85 million, they spent $5 million. They just didn't spend the money. And they're saying we're waiting for evidence-based programming, we're waiting to see what works. There are a lot of programs that work, we're just not spending the money. As Alderwoman, I'm going to demand greater accountability for our budget process, make sure we're actually spending the money that we're allocating, getting these money to the communities that desperately need it, and get the money into the violence prevention program so that we can all feel safer.
Public safety. That's that topic that everyone's talking about. Almost every door I knock on, people are talking about public safety. I think we first need to address the fact that there are communities that have been traumatized by the police. And we need to make sure that we are holding police accountable for those that are traumatizing some of our communities. We also need to make sure that we are paying attention and campaigning against violence. There was a Don't Shoot campaign, which reduced, back in, I believe it was maybe 15 years ago, which reduced gun violence and little kids getting shot by probably 40%. It was a campaign. We've removed ourselves from that. We just had a breakdown, which was called the pandemic, and a lot of people's mental health. So we have to make sure that when we are talking about police and putting more police on the street, that we are talking about how to reunite police with the community, making sure that police know the people. If there's crime in every major city, we need to make sure that police are talking to people that are suspected criminals. This will reduce crime way more than just growing a lot of police on the street. And I understand not having enough support. The police department, they need to be supported. Anytime you work in a situation where you don't have enough manpower, it causes stresses on the entire community, even police. So we need to make sure that when we are talking to the police, we are making sure that they are not traumatizing our neighborhoods. We need to make sure that they're building relationships with the people in the ward and that they have what they need to do their jobs.
All right, so I like to say community safety. I don't know why public safety just doesn't do it for me, but community safety sounds like I'm talking amongst us, okay? So community safety, what do we need to do? First of all, communities rely on stable neighbors, right? When there is so many neighbors who are running in and out of our communities because of transients, we need to make sure that we are providing a stable community for our neighbors so that we can all grow together. First of all, that's what keeps us safe. Secondly, I know everybody wants to talk about policing, but let's talk about how we can support our police. We can take the pressures off of their plates that they should not even be doing. We are not fully funding our mental health system. A lot of our police officers are responding to mental health crises where they don't have the proper training, where they are not equipped with the tools to help the situation, and it is always escalating, right? That is how we can support our community. First, we need to make sure that we are putting money into mental health resources, like the Treatment Not Trauma Ordinance. When you're talking about the role of an alderperson about community safety, this is why City Council is so important, because there are ordinances that our aldermen, on behalf of us, can implement on a citywide level called Treatment Not Trauma, where we are sending out crisis responders to show up to a mental health traumatic experience and actually offer the resources that they need without a police officer present, so that the police officers can actually focus on high areas of crime to solve these problems. We also need to make sure that we are giving our resources right here in the 46th Ward the support that they need, right? In the 46th Ward, we are losing neighbors because they cannot afford to live here, and we are drawing a distinction between the haves and the have-nots. As a community, we're going to thrive when we are all in this together and understanding that we need to know each other. We need to grow each other. When we are doing community service, get out in our neighborhood and get to know your neighbors. I grew up with a B cop. Anybody here from Chicago who had a B cop back in the day? No? Okay. My B cop in this neighborhood was Mr. Foote, Officer Foote. Officer Foote would see you on the other side of the neighborhood, know you were not supposed to be there, take you home. Those are relationships that we need with the police officers who are patrolling our streets. Get them to come into our schools and actually play a basketball game with these young people. Come and actually teach them a skill that's outside of their normal 9-to-5 day. Show them what it's like to actually protect and serve the community that they are representing. So it's multifaceted. It is not just a one-stop shop approach. And again, as a community, we could be making these decisions. And as your alderperson, I want to make those decisions with you.
So when we think of police accountability, we're thinking of two different things. One is making sure that we're holding police to an ethical standard where they're acting without systemic bias. And the other is that we're holding police accountable to doing their duty, to coming quickly when you call 911 and to solving crimes. Right now, the case clearance rate is only 25%. This is less than other major cities, and that's unacceptable. To do that, we do need more detective capacity than we have now. It's a tough job being a Chicago police officer, and it's going to be difficult to recruit immediately police to fill those vacancies. One of the things I would like to try is using non-sworn personnel, people who have not been through the police academy, to do things like paperwork, traffic enforcement, and allow the police officers who have been through the academy to focus on detective work, on solving crimes, and responding to violent crime. We can also pass the treatment not trauma ordinance so that we have a mental health force who can respond to mental health crises separately. Have that 988 crisis line so we're separating mental health from violent crime. And investing into other prevention programs like Communities Partnering for Peace, that is an intervention for people who are either most likely to be victims or perpetrate a violent crime. We've got a new role on the ballot this cycle. Some of the candidates for this role are watching this forum in this room right now, so I encourage you to also look up the ECPS role. That's going to be for community accountability for the police. And I think that that's going to provide a good liaison to start to heal the relationship between police and residents in the city. One of the places that I feel like we hear people feel the most unsafe is on transit. So when we think about public safety, we also have to think about safety on the CTA and on our bus lines. CTA is severely understaffed right now. Many conductors are billing 80-hour work weeks. In order to make sure that the CTA is safer, restore ridership, and restore reliability, I think we should look into bringing back the unarmed conductors who were on the cars enforcing rules that we had them in the late 90s and they've been eliminated, but bringing them back would hopefully make not only the CTA personnel feel more safe, but also the riders.
In the first 2 weeks of January, the city of Chicago had 99 armed carjackings. That's outrageous. 2 of them were in Clarendon. One was 50 feet from where we're sitting. Talk about feeling not safe to go to Jewel. You can't even feel safe to take the groceries out of your car in front of your house with your child in the car when you get back from Jewel. It's a problem. Our streets are flooded with guns, illegal guns. And we have a gun problem, a violence problem. Independent of the mental health issues, we have an epidemic in gun violence right now. And so when we look at what we have to do about this, to me, former federal prosecutor, what I say is this: we need a transparent, comprehensive plan, citywide, where we bring in stakeholders and we come up with solutions to dealing with the crime problem. And those have to run on parallel tracks. We have to have short-term, medium-term, and long-term solutions. Short-term solution, yes, we do need more police. 19th Police District here that represents us and most, not just our ward, but several wards around us, 40% down on police in the last decade. You know, we can't do community policing and have police come and play basketball with kids if they can't get out of their car because there aren't enough of them on a given beat. We desperately need to have more police, trained police, that can actually help us with the problems we have and help be a deterrent and help be around so that we can avoid some of the situations that we're facing when it comes to the violent crime, and we can respond to 911 calls in a timely manner. But we also can do other things. We've got medium and long-term solutions, and this is where I find fascinating the fact that we don't have a citywide crime plan that really hurts. Because, for example, I don't know if you know, but 6 months ago, the city of Chicago got $250 million from the federal government for violence prevention programs. Did you know? How's it being spent? No one knows. That's why you have to have a transparent plan. It has to not just be comprehensive, but it has to be transparent. And there are programs out there that on a smaller scale have proven to be quite successful. University of Chicago Labs is doing actual studies using data metrics to try to figure out what programs work. And that's what we need to do. We need this to be a data-driven process so that we know what programs we put our money into and invest in further and what programs we can try to scale up. So for example, the Becoming a Man program for younger kids, middle school kids, to avoid violence as they grow older, has been successful in terms of the graduation rates, the rates of lower rates of violence as kids get older. There are a lot of positive things that have come out of that program. The Heartland Alliance Ready program, which tries to get kids, older teenage kids, into the workforce and vocational, because ultimately, the way out of the crime problem is to give kids hope. They need hope to do something. There are some programs that some of the labor unions are working on, some of the trades unions on the south side, where they want to build a vocational school so they can get kids into the trades. Those are good paying jobs. There are things we can do as a city, and there are things that we can do as a community to make things better in the long run so that we can stop this constant circle of violence that keeps going and going and going. But we need a plan. And right now, we have no plan. The plan is, superintendent, the mayor tells the superintendent we need more police to stand on Michigan Avenue this weekend. That's not a plan. That's just a reaction. right? We need a real plan, and that's what I want to do. If I get to City Hall, I want to be on the Public Safety Committee, and I want to push to get an actual plan so that this city can actually get back on track. Because we're never going to bring in businesses and get people to move here and have a vibrant community where people feel safe if we have 99 carjackings every 2 weeks. It's just not acceptable.
All right, I know that we have a full house and you guys are eager to ask these candidates questions, hard questions that I know that they're excited to answer. Before we open the floor up to all of you, and I do ask that we please keep the responses to 30 seconds when the audience is asking so that everybody gets a chance to respond. And if audience members, if you have one specific candidate that you just want that answered, you can go ahead and just ask that one candidate a question. But right now, I am super excited, very, very happy to see our Brenneman students here. A couple of them have questions for you all. So can I please have my two students come up, Zach and Sam? As their teacher, I can't tell you how proud it makes me that they are here. No time to ask you all questions. We're going to start here with Zach. Zach?
What is the plan revolving around the height of gun violence in Chicago, specifically in Uptown?
Go ahead. Just go straight down the line for this.
Okay. Gun violence in Uptown. Well, as I was saying just a minute ago, gun violence is a real issue in the city, and we do need more police in the short term. Empirical evidence shows that having more police in the short term is the quickest and fastest way to reduce violent crime. So that is something that we need. Now, longer term, we need people your age who might be otherwise inclined to commit violence, not you, but others, to get programs so they can help them in the future. And we need to create a situation where our kids have a hope for having a job and having a family, getting out of the house, getting their own place. Because that's really what I think motivates young people, is the path of prosperity. And if you don't have a path of prosperity, and if everything looks like a dead end, you're more likely to get trapped in that cycle.
Well, I'm really excited that our colleagues in Springfield just passed the assault weapons ban. Thank you to our legislators. That will be one big step moving forward in reducing gun violence in our neighborhood. I think another thing we can do is invest and include youth more. I would love to see the Chamber of Commerce Uptown United create more summer jobs and training programs earlier than now, and making sure that kids get to try out different workplaces, either work at a restaurant or work in an office in the neighborhood, and include kids in decision making as well. I would love to have a representative in my office that is a student liaison to the schools in our neighborhood, and have students make more decision making processes. One of the things I'd like to do is participatory budgeting. That means helping the constituents will help decide what happens to our menu funding, and that's the funding that changes the infrastructure in the neighborhood. And I'd like to have voting for participatory budgeting start at age 14 instead of now.
Again, when we're talking about gun violence, it just brings it back really forthcoming, because I have lost so many friends personally right here in the 46th Ward to gun violence. And when we're having conversations around this, it really does feel like we're not having an honest conversation. And the honest conversation comes with safe communities are fully resourced communities. When our children feel like they have a purpose with going to great schools, when they have a purpose with access to healthy food and clean air, when they feel like they have a purpose to actually live past the age of 21, they're not trying to create violent crimes with guns, right? when we're talking to our young people, and I feel like I was just a young person, y'all, I'm 31 now, okay? I am not with the TikTok trends. But what I am doing is I am keeping my ear to the streets and making sure that I am in great conversations with folks all around our ward. I'm not sure if any of you know, but there is a current peace treaty in our ward. It is. It's been over a year where 2 factions of people in our ward have not harmed each other in over a year. And that's not being publicized, right? Because it gets looked over. But there are people behind the scenes who are working hard for our communities to keep us safe every single day. We need to make sure that we are giving our young people the tools to succeed. One thing that I want to do in the 46th Ward specifically is I want to group our young people up with other small business owners, local small business owners, so that they understand what it takes to actually grow from the ground up, so that they can understand what it takes to have something of their own to pass down to their children. Secondly, we need to make sure that we are fully funding some after-school programs around here, you all, that actually pay our young people. A lot of our young people are resorting to violence because they are impoverished. They have no money, and their only way of hope is to unfortunately cause harm to somebody else who has something that they don't have. So if we understand that there are some root causes that we can tackle here, we should be doing it. And those are just a few of the examples that I think of that could have prevented some of my closest friends from dying at the hands of guns on the streets.
I've had young men that I've had to teach about gun violence and doing the right thing. In addition to a lot of what Angela said, we have to make sure, there's this theme on the street, snitches get stitches, right? This makes it fearful for a lot of young people and young adults to come forth and talk about what is really happening in their communities. We need to have some kind of call system, anonymous call system, where we can start to get police the information they need to get some of these guns off the streets. We also should have robust programs for young children. We need to teach them early. We need to get in their heads early and say, look, this is what your pathway leads to. And in addition to that, there are programs in which you have gangbanger influencers that determine when and where retaliation from other gang members stop. We need to get these people employed to be gangbanger influencers to stop so much retaliation, which will and has been known in the past to decrease gun violence associated with gangs.
I referenced earlier violence prevention, and there are a lot of evidence-based programs that we can start funding in the city of Chicago, such as the Becoming a Man BAM program, the READY program, the CRED program, that actually has been shown to help reduce the rates of gun violence. But as Angela was alluding to earlier, this isn't just about guns, it's about hopelessness, lack of opportunity. There was a really interesting report that just came out in the news 2 days ago. Highly recommend reading it if you can find it. Where the Secret Service just did an analysis of all of the mass shootings that have occurred over the past 10 years in the United States. They found that 25% of the individuals who committed mass shootings had experienced housing instability in the past 10 years. They found that a third of the individuals who committed mass shootings had dealt with bullying or had experienced other trauma in their life and didn't have resources to cope with that. So we're never going to fully deal with gun violence if we don't start dealing with fixing the social safety net, making sure we have communities where people can thrive, making sure we have communities where people feel hope, so they feel like they have other choices besides carrying a gun. I remember when I worked at the county as well, I'd go to the juvenile temporary detention center and we'd talk to the kids and try and learn what was going on with them. And I remember meeting a 6th grader who was a straight A student, and he carried a gun to school one day because he was scared someone was going to shoot him. 6th grader, straight A, got expelled from school and was ended in the juvenile temporary detention center. We have to do better for our kids.
Thank you. We also have one more question. Sam is a part of the LSE here at Brenneman. So Sam?
If elected, how will you work to balance the imbalance of funding to Chicago public schools?
Let me remind you all, 30 seconds please, so that we can get to the audience member questions as well.
So there's an imbalance in school funding in the state of Illinois, not just in the city of Chicago. And the city of Chicago tends to be on the wrong end of that. We get less money than I think we deserve based on the allocation of state money. So that's problem number one. Within the city of Chicago, one of the biggest problems we have with funding is that a lot of schools that are successful in the city also have, frankly, parents who are quite wealthy as well. Like there's an imbalance where you have some schools that need more resources because the kids in those schools need more resources. And some schools are basically feeding children, right? They're housing children, they're doing all social work, they're doing a lot of things where that really have more of a holistic view. It's not just about like teaching class, it's about dealing with real life issues, homelessness and other things that kids are experiencing. So that does take extra resources. Other schools are in a much better position because kids come to school, they're prepared, they've had breakfast, they've done their homework, they can, they're in a more stable home environment that allows them to succeed and to flourish. So what we need to do is make sure that the schools that do have additional challenges have resources to meet those challenges.
So funding for Chicago Public Schools shouldn't be based on where you live,
No.
or how many students go to your school with you, or how you fared in the Go CPS system when you were applying for high school. It should be more equitable across the board. And what the city council can do is revisit that formula for the way that money is allocated to the schools to make sure that every school is going to have the resources that they need to be successful and make the students there successful.
I'm in the middle, so I get the both short and long. 30-second version is student-based budgeting. Here in the city of Chicago, we have an issue with that, you all. Student-based budgeting means that every school, no matter where you are, if you have it or if you do not, you get the same amount per pupil. And we know that neighborhoods across this city are completely underfunded as a whole. That means that their schools are underfunded as a whole. So we need to understand that we need to end student-based budgeting and make sure that we are providing the resources to students who need it more in certain parts of the city so that they can thrive at the same rate as their colleagues on other parts of the city. I know you all know that Chicago is one of the most segregated cities in the entire country. You can get on that red line and you can see the disparities that we have. That also means that the disparities trickle down to our children and the schools, right? So we need to make sure that we are fully funding these schools all across the city when they will never have the opportunity to do it themselves.
I'm going to make this easy and quick. Chicago public schools should be funded equitably and fairly by Chicago. Thank you.
A lot of this has already been said, but at the end of the day, the state says that the way you're supposed to fund your schools is based on need. And that's what you're supposed to do with the state dollars. CPS is not following that model. We're just distributing the money equally, not looking at what the schools need. And that creates inequities because in areas where schools are underfunded, they can create parent groups like the one we have here, but in some neighborhoods, those parent groups are able to pay for extra teachers, pay for after-school programming. And not every neighborhood can do that. And that responsibility shouldn't be on the parents to help fund the school. So we need to make sure this is done more equitably. We need to stop the having the funding be per pupil, which is only hurting schools when they lose enrollment. And we need to make sure it's more equitable so the quality of your education does not depend on your zip code.
Once again, can we just please give the 8th grade students want to shout out, there's a couple of other Brenneman students, so if they could just raise their hands, Inas and Cameron, I saw you guys too. And the Brenneman also raised their hand. I'm so excited that our students are here to see civics in action. Right now, I do want to open up the floor. There are a couple of reminders, just housekeeping rules that I want to say. Our candidates they were gracious enough to come. Thank you all. You guys are the real stars of the show because you guys are the ones that get to vote. You have a say. So I know the candidates are eager to share. Again, candidates, can we just keep it to 30 seconds so as many people that have questions can come up? Do you want? Okay, if you can shut up, that's great.
I really like to thank all 5 of the candidates here. My only problem is they all seem to be on the same wavelength. Can we go down the line and can I hear from each and every one of you how you stand out from the crowd? What makes it different? You have a gripe about things that aren't too bad. In other words, I'm going to stir it up a little bit.
Great question.
What distinguishes the candidates? Well, I've lived in the community for over 30 years. It distinguishes me from some of the candidates, not all the candidates. I've lived here longer than you, Angela, only because you weren't born yet. But no, what distinguishes me, I think, primarily is that I have a different set of experience than a lot of other people. For example, I'm the only person even running for city council in the entire city of Chicago who's ever successfully prosecuted violent gun offenders in federal court. So I have a background in criminal justice that I think suits me well in terms of understanding that issue. I also manage a $2 billion budget in a government agency, which I think is also helpful when it comes to budgeting issues. We're going to have a lot of fiscal problems and crises coming up over the next 4 years, I foretell, and there are going to be difficult decisions to make, and managing budgets is not going to be easy. And I've got a lot of experience doing that in government and in making those tough calls. So I think if there's anything that distinguishes me, it's the experience.
So I'm a sustainability professional. Like Patrick, I think I'm the only one in the city that is running. I work in energy efficiency right now. We haven't had a Department of the Environment in the city of Chicago since 2011. So I think it's time to reprioritize our sustainability efforts, make sure that we're increasing our very embarrassing 9% recycling rate, thinking forward in infrastructure in terms of incorporating permeable pavement and planning for climate change resilience. I've had a long history of activism in the community and can point to community level accomplishments that I've had as a Block Club president, and I couple that with experience in Washington working to pass legislation as an energy and environmental advisor for Sherrod Brown, worked on Toxic Substances Control Act reform, was the first major chemical reform since the 1970s. So my candidacy features a coupling of community activism, a Washington experience, and sustainability experience.
What sets me apart? I am literally, sir, a product of this ward in every facet. I am what we call a product of great public schools, this school in particular that we are sitting in. So when we're talking about public schools, I am a pillar for that. I am also a product of when we're talking about sustainability in a ward. To have 4 generations, I'm currently raising a 5th generation in the 46th ward, right? When we are talking about what does longevity look like in our ward, I am a product of that. When we are thinking about policy experts, because whoever gets in this seat as alderperson, they're going to have to understand how the policies that we are impacting trickle down to each and every last one of us. I love policy. My degree is in public policy. I love working with neighbors. I'm a natural born organizer because my grandmother had me at picket lines before I could probably make full sentences, right here in this ward. The 46th ward has always been a ward of fighters. We've always fought alongside each other for our neighbors to make this ward the community that we all want to live in. I'm honored to be supported by so many grassroots organizations like the Asian American Midwest Progressives, like One People's Campaign. These are organizations in our ward that work with our neighbors every single day to make it better. And I've been on the front lines of that. You probably have seen me on WBEZ or Chicago Tonight. fighting the developments that don't have all of the inclusivity that we need to thrive here in the ward, right? This isn't community service to me, you all. This is me doing the work that is always going to have to continue to be done. With or without this title of alderperson, I'm still going to be on the front lines of our community. What I want to do is I want to take this fight that has been in my soul for almost 2 decades now to the front lines of City Council.
What sets me apart is, first of all, I'm a bartender. So our community engagement meetings are gonna be fun. But in all seriousness, right? I've done this work for over 35 years. And I've worked with different races, creeds, colors, religious backgrounds. I've made relationships with everyone. And I also feel that I can have the conversations with anyone. And so that's what I've been doing. And I have gone to represent the United States with over 176 other countries. And this is the thing that sets me apart. I can do the work. I've built the relationships. I know the people that can get jobs in this community. And that's why I am asking for your vote to be the next alderwoman of this board.
So I'd be ready on day one. I've run a constituent service office. I've passed legislation by bringing together diverse groups of stakeholders so I can get the job done immediately. And I want to give you one example of a stakeholder building. So I don't know how many people remember when you used to be able to smoke in bars and restaurants. But back when I worked for Mike Quigley, I complained to him one day about people smoking in the office next door to us, and he said, well, do something about it. So I wrote the Cook County Clean Indoor Air Ordinance that led to Smoke-Free Illinois, and actually received a Lung Champion Award for that. In order to do that, it wasn't easy. I had to bring together a coalition of restaurant owners, bar owners, libertarians, and literally exotic dancers in unincorporated Cook County, literally, to come together and get this legislation passed. And that's why experience is so important, and not just government experience, and not just private sector experience, but having all the experience. And I'll be able to do that on day one for you and not miss a beat.
Would you like to come in? Yes.
I can just speak from here. I know we all have affordable housing and public safety and education at top of mind, but I want to know what each candidate's specific passion project is that's not something that we've brought up today. Like, what is something that you want to see bettered in Chicago that we haven't already touched on? Great question.
With the
I'll
caveat.
I think to be fair, we started here at just 7:10, right? We'll start at 7:10.
Okay, here's what I'd like to say, right? I'm sorry, Patrick. I'd like to see more community. I'd like to see more of a sense of community. I think that COVID has put people in spaces that we didn't necessarily want to be in. And I'd like to bring back block club parties. I'd like to bring back bingo. I'd like to bring back things that we remember when we were little children, when we were small and growing up in neighborhoods. I want to bring back a sense of neighborhood. And I think that we can get that done. I think that we can get back there. And neighborhoods and communities that are close-knit just make a better environment for everyone. And that's what I'd like to see in the long run.
So the most important issue to me, because it's so personal, is mental health. And we are failing individuals in mental health crisis and their families miserably in this country and in this city. It starts with an issue that Angela raised earlier about who are we using to respond to 911 crisis calls when someone has a mental health crisis. I've had to make those calls for my brother's safety, for my family's safety, and I know having police respond to that doesn't give the individual the treatment that they need. They generally go to emergency room, maybe for 72 hours in a hospital stay, or we take them to the Cook County Jail, because there's always enough money for a bed in a jail, and there's never enough money for long-term treatment. I want to work to make sure we have more long-term treatment options for those suffering from mental health crises, have more support for their families so they have a place to turn, and make sure we're investing in our children's mental health because our children are going through so much trauma from COVID to the violence that they're seeing in Chicago every single day. I would divert so much of my energy to this, and it'd be one of the most important things that I do. Thank you for the question.
30 seconds, 30 seconds. Okay. 2 things I really want to do, y'all. Bring Chicago home. If you do not know what that is an ordinance that would be a streamlined revenue to house our houseless neighbors. As a ward that is fully diverse, including neighbors who may or may not live in tents, they need to be housed. And we're always talking about how can we support them, how can we help them. We have an opportunity to do that. I won't tell you that they had an opportunity to pass it, and 25 alders showed up, and they needed one more alder person to show up, and they didn't. You can do the research on who did it, who didn't. I'm not spilling the tea, okay? Secondly, we need green jobs. The city of Chicago has lead pipes, y'all, that we all share. That's a problem. When we are talking about our young people, right? How are we going to get our young people off the streets and give them good paying jobs? How about we start cleaning these lead pipes that we all share, right? How about we start putting them in a position to care for the environment that is going to house us for generations to come? So 30 seconds, I heard the timer go up.
Improving environmental sustainability in the city would definitely be my pet project. I would love to see the city add citywide composting in addition to improving our recycling rate. One really wonky, nerdy thing that I would like to do is change the legislation around open space impact fees. That's a tax that is used to pay for open spaces, and we spent about $200,000 paying for a playground to be added next to the former Stewart School. When that was acquired by the developer, by the private developer, it was eliminated, and that tax money then is really useless. Anytime that we pay for a piece of property with open space impact fees, and it becomes private land later, we should have those open space impact fees create an equivalent green space somewhere else in the ward, because that's about being responsible with your tax dollars as well as preserving interior green space. We have the lakefront, it's very beautiful. We need to do more to protect it, but we also need to think about our interior parkland and making sure that we also have those available as resources.
So my secondary issue, transportation. I'm a CTA nerd, right? I didn't have a car for like 7 years at one point. I take the red line to and from work every day. I love public transportation, but right now we've got a real problem with the CTA. It's not safe, it's not clean, it's not reliable, and it's not accessible. Those are 4 big problems. We need to improve safety so that I don't feel bad when my wife's trying to take the red line home at nighttime and I'm worried that she's gonna get mugged, right? We need it to be cleaner. It's kind of a mess right now. We need more staffing. We also need it to be more reliable, and that gets to the ghost bus issue, that gets to how we use GPS, and a lot of other issues that I don't have time to talk about right now, but trust me, it could be more reliable, and it should be more reliable. And it's gotta be accessible. The subway station that I take every day is the Sheridan one. And as I'm getting older, and I am getting older, walking up 3 flights of stairs is a lot harder than it used to be when I was 22, trust me. And you know, you got the Ruth Schreiman house right there. How are people supposed to get up there? It's steep and it's hard, right? And it's icy and it's cold. So there are things we can do to improve public transportation, but I love it. For those, I see some faces here that probably remember A stops and B stops. That was me, right? When I was young, right? You hear me. And then the second part of transportation is bicycles, right? Bike safety, big issue. It's a big issue in our ward. We've had a couple tragic incidents of fatalities recently. It's a problem. We need to focus on trying to get a grid for bikes, for a safe bike grid that people can travel. We also need to work on contraflow. We need to work on protected bike lanes if necessary on bigger streets. But bikes are the future, especially for the younger people, right? But bikes are the future because they're environmentally sound, they don't clog up the streets, they don't cause pollution, and they're another great alternative way to get around.
Thank you. We are going to get ready to wrap up. I do want to thank everyone for coming, but before we close, I want each candidate very quickly, 10 seconds, tell people why they should vote for you. Give us your closing statement. I'm going to start on this end this time. So we'll start over here with Patrick.
I've worked in government my whole life. I've worked my way up in government my whole life. I've worked with Congress and the White House and OMB, promulgating regulations, working with other components. When I was a federal prosecutor, I worked with multiple federal agencies. I know what it's like to build coalitions. I know what it's like to work with others and to get things done and to accomplish things. And that's what we need to do in the city, is accomplish things.
Thank you so much for coming. I've really enjoyed looking out at this room and seeing so many people that I know. And they're people that I know and I've worked with, even if they're wearing a button for another candidate tonight, that I am just so thrilled to be back from COVID. I really missed having these interactions with you. I saw you at the bus station feeding the birds this morning. Alice, I don't think I've seen you since we were on a zoning and development Zoom meeting together. It has just been a delight. And I love building these relationships and fighting for our community. We came so close to victory in 2019, and now I am back to finish what we started. There's more work to do, specifically in the areas of public safety, transportation, housing, and sustainability. I don't think we have to make a choice between maintaining diversity and affordability and increasing economic development in the ward. I want the 46th ward to be the ward that has it all. And I would like to be your alderperson who's serving with both brain and heart, experience and passion.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us in my elementary gym room. Still giving me butterflies up here. When I'm thinking about what it takes to be a successful alderperson, especially for our ward, I'm thinking of a few things. I'm thinking about they have to be a great organizer. And as a natural born organizer, you all, I can tell you that I've been working with folks all around our ward for decades. From elders to young people, from people who have two opposing views, and I've been able to sit at the table and get us to a place that we can agree on what we need to push our ward in the right position. Secondly, I also think that they need to understand how interconnected we are as a ward, right? We live different experiences, but we really depend on each other. And as we depend on each other, we need a leader who is gonna understand that as well. Lastly, they need to understand how the policies that we need as a city impact us each and every single day. And as a policy nerd and as a policy baby, I am fighting for our ward so that we have policies all across this city that are going to positively impact our young people, that are going to positively impact our walkability, that are going to positively protect our elders and our families in this ward. I am extremely humbled, again, to be standing in front of you 4 years later, doing all of this hard work with a baby on my hip. It's only gotten harder, y'all, okay? But I am up for the challenge. I am up to represent us because we are so diverse and we have so many different views as a ward, that I want to be the bridge between all of us to actually make our ward the ward that people want to continuously move and live in and thrive in, and also want to make sure that we are doing this cohesively together. So I truly appreciate all of you all's support tonight. I hope that I can win your vote in 30 days, okay?
Again, I'm Rashonda Williams, and I've been doing this work for over 35 years. I've worked hard for those 35 years, and I believe I can work just as hard for everyone in this ward. I've made the relationships that will make things happen for this ward. I have been in places that no one else has been in. I've had conversations across the table that brought us all together in the end. I feel like I am social worker with empathy, law enforcement with common sense, and a person who has continuously worked hard for working class families. I will continue to do the same if I am elected into your position. I love this ward. This has the potential to not only be the greatest ward in the city of Chicago, but the greatest ward in the world. And that is my goal. And I don't have any babies anymore, so I have nothing but time to work and work and work and work. And I hope that you trust me on that.
So my campaign team always tells me that sometimes I'm a little too intense at the forums because I care so passionately about the issues. But I want you to know that I'm so hopeful about the direction of our city, about the direction of our ward. I know with the new people coming in the city council that I can work with this neighborhood, we can all work together to have a neighborhood where we can afford to stay in our homes, where we can afford to enter the housing market, where we can fix the social safety net, where you can feel safe walking down the street. I know we can do that together. And I've got the experience to do that with you. And I would be so honored if you'd consider voting for me on February 28th. And I want to let you know there's no pressure, but February 28th is my birthday. So it'd be really great if you could vote for me in addition to bringing cake. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give it back. Hello, everyone. On behalf of Buena Park Neighbors Association, I just want to thank all the candidates for coming. I am pretty confident that whoever the winner may be, you're all winners in our book, and I think that the passion you showed for our community is just one like no other, and regardless, again, of who is elected, I think that we're going to see all your faces in the community, and I'm happy to say that. So good luck to you all, and thank you all for coming as well.